Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining PropFlow's Green Homes webinar series. Today we'll be discussing how can you make your home more energy efficient. It's great to know so many of you are listening in today, so thanks for joining us. I'm Pam Barbato, founder of Action Net Zero CIC. Our purpose is to help accelerate sustainable change, and our mission is to empower communities, people and businesses to take affordable actions to tackle the climate and ecological crises. I'm delighted to be facilitating today's webinar, joined by our expert panel, who we'll be introducing shortly. But actually, in our session today, what we'll be discussing with our experts is the process of making our homes more energy efficient and thinking about how do you actually decide what to do and when? What's the process if you want to install solar panels and heat pumps, for instance? And how can you finance the cost of making your home more green, and what are the benefits? It's also shining a light on the great support that's available for helping to retrofit homes and how you can access it. So now moving on to some general points about the webinar. For those of you who have joined, you'll see that you can hear us, but we can't hear you, which is perfectly normal. We expect the webinar to take about an hour. And in terms of the live Q&A, you can actually ask questions at any time using the webinar functionality. So if you've joined through the Riverside app, then you'll see a little speech mark, which you can click on to enter the chat at any time. And if you joined with LinkedIn, then please post your questions in the comments. We've dedicated, as we've said, Q&A, which will be in about 20 minutes time. But going through the programme, it's now a pleasure to invite our experts. I'm going to ask each of them to do a short introduction to themselves before we get into the presentations that they're going to be supplying. So Luke, over to you.
Thank you, Pam, and good morning, everyone. I think it's going to be quite a good session today. I'm Luke. I'm the founder of PropFlow, and we provide essentially digital tools to help you understand what the benefits are to doing retrofit. We then connect you with suppliers to get direct quotes, and then we also provide the tools to help you manage your property or afterwards as well. So particularly with smart home technology as well, looking at heat loss, draft risk, that sort of thing. That's it for me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lloyd. Lloyd Greenfield, founder of Glow Green.
Great. Thank you, Pam. My name's Lloyd Greenfield. I'm the founder and CEO of Glow Green. I started my career as a heating engineer, then developed my skills into renewable energy. As CEO, I'm responsible for leading the day-to-day organisation of Glow Green to make sure we operate efficiently and most importantly, deliver really high customer service levels. Today, I'm going to be talking about solar and heat pumps. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. And Emma Lower, CEO of Lendology CIC.
Thanks, Pam. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Lendology CIC is a really unique organisation in as much as we lend funds on behalf of councils. And what we're here to do is to help people either make general home improvements, but more importantly on this session, it's more about energy efficiency and renewable energy measures. And I'm going to take you through a case study of a recent customer.
Brilliant, thank you. And finally, but not least, Laura Barber, Marketing Manager at Retrofit West.
Hi everyone, my name is Laura, and as Pam said, I'm the Marketing Manager at Retrofit West, which means that I handle all the communications around retrofit and help people understand what retrofit is and why it's a benefit.
Brilliant, thank you. So each of our panelists is now going to take you through a short presentation. So I'm going to pass back to Luke, who is going to talk to us overall about why and when to retrofit to help support reducing your energy costs and efficiency.
Hello, I'm Luke, the CEO and founder of PropFlow. In this presentation, I will briefly cover some important considerations when making your home greener. The most important thing is that you need to be clear on why you're actually making your home greener in the first place. Do you want to reduce your carbon footprint? By the end of the century, climate change will be costing the UK economy around £157 billion per year. That's more than the government spends on defence, policing, transport, and overseas aid combined. The war in Ukraine has also exposed how reliant we are on foreign countries for our energy use. In 2022, we imported £117 billion worth, and even in a normal year, we're importing close to £50 billion worth. But the most obvious individual benefit is direct energy savings. A small solar system and battery can create savings of nearly £16,000 over its lifetime at a cost of around £8,000, so a decent investment. We've also estimated that energy efficient properties could benefit from nearly £3,000 of mortgage lender incentives. But there are also lenders that are looking at other ways to encourage energy efficiency, including increased affordability. So, how much more can you borrow? And also more flexible lending criteria as well. Energy efficiency also affects the thermal comfort of the property, how well ventilated it is, and the price stability of energy bills. Extreme weather is increasingly common, and well-insulated homes not only keep you warmer in winter, but also keep you cooler in summer as well. And according to RICS, the Royal Institute for Chartered Surveyors, it could also increase your property value by up to 15%. In future, as green becomes the standard, it could be that a discount is applied to more efficient properties instead. And here's a real life example from two identical properties going on the market around the same time. One had solar, one didn't. And the market actually factored this in with an increase of about 2.4%. It's also important to note that landlords could benefit from tax relief and also maintaining compliance with minimum energy efficiency standards. Another consideration is timing. There are a number of natural trigger points where you can make your home greener. Buying a new home, remortgaging, renovating, and retirement are particularly good opportunities, especially if you need financing. And finally, depending on your priorities and timescales, what approach could you take to retrofitting? One approach is called Fabric First. This prioritizes things like external wall insulation to make sure that you optimize the heat loss and air tightness of a property. It does make sense as it means future improvements will be more effective, but the financial case is usually a bit weaker. It would also typically make more sense to do these works as part of a wider renovation project. But another approach is called Fabric Fifth. So this prioritizes getting the property off gas, behavior change with smart home technology, lower cost insulation like loft insulation and draft proofing, and solar panels before making those major fabric upgrades. It usually makes better financial sense, but savings obviously won't be as optimized. But it does lower barriers so that you can start with less disruptive, higher return improvements first. So what support is available? We've developed a tool called GreenVal, where you can get a report on your property that looks at these overall benefits, including health and well-being. It also helps you compare improvements, see the financial return, and get quotes from trusted installers. And this is only available through our partners. And finally, we are currently also involved in a project which gives discounts on improvements such as £700 off solar, £700 off heat pump, and up to £1,000 of free smart home technology and a free EPC. If you are interested, please reach out on the email below or get a quote through GreenVal from one of our partners. Thank you for listening, and I hope you found the presentation helpful.
Brilliant. Thanks, Luke. It's really good to hear some of those cost benefits that you've highlighted so that we can start to see where we can take advantage of greening our homes for all the reasons that you've covered. So now we'd like to move on to Lloyd. Lloyd's going to do his presentation, looking specifically at some of the great interventions products that can be applied to help green and reduce energy and improve energy efficiency. Over to you, Lloyd.
Thank you very much, Pam. Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation. Today I'm going to give you an overview of Glow Green and solar and heat pumps. So why do we exist? We exist to make energy efficiency easier and more accessible to everyone, the wider market of the UK. When choosing a company to install either solar panels or heat pump, it's really important that you check their accreditations. There's three main accreditations to check. One being the MCS, who will ensure all our office processes and renewable energy installations are fitted to the highest possible standards. HISE, who will protect any customer deposit that is paid to Glow Green for a solar or heat pump installation. And EPVS, who will check the solar and heat pump design before Glow Green does the installation to make sure that our design calculations are correct. So a little bit about Glow Green. So we were the UK's first company to offer remote quoting for all of our services under one roof. So we supply 6 products, which are hydrogen-ready boilers, solar panels, batteries, EV chargers, air conditioning and heat pumps. We've won 9 awards to date with over 13 years of successful trading. We have 120 office staff, 1,700 engineers and 50,000 satisfied customers. We're also very proud to be excellent rated on Trustpilot with over 9,000 online reviews. So in the last 12 months, we have successfully fitted 21,000 solar panels. We've created grid self-sufficiency of up to 95%. Our system should produce 7.2 million kilowatt hours of electricity per year. That's an average return on investment of over 15% for our customers, with a combined 77 million of electrical lifetime savings. There have been 1.3 million solar installations to date in the UK, and with 25 million UK properties without solar, we've got a long way to go. Our solar installations start from 4,995 and can reduce your bills by up to 80%. Our quotes are no obligation and completed by our friendly design team, and all of these are done remotely using our bespoke design software. After placing your order, installation lead times are typically 4 weeks, and they're completed within 1 day. We offer finance options too with low monthly repayments, and we also guarantee to beat any like-for-like quote. So heat pumps, they work really well with solar or actually as a standalone product. Glow Green is approved by Ofgem to be providing funding to everybody of £7,500 towards a new heat pump installation. This is under something called the BUS scheme, which is the boiler upgrade scheme, which actually means your heat pump could be for free in some instances. In most cases, extra pipework is needed for a heat pump, and typically you may be required to upgrade your radiators, and these type of costs can be in the region of £3,000, which is about the same cost as a gas boiler. Installations do take a week. This includes one outdoor unit, which would replace the boiler, and an indoor hot water cylinder. Thank you very much for your time today and for listening, and I really look forward to answering any questions at the end.
Brilliant, thanks Lloyd. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions around some of those install examples that you've given. But now moving on to Emma. Emma is now going to talk to us about her case study in particular from Lendology CIC.
Lovely, thank you ever so much, Pam. Good. I'll share my screen first. There we go. Wonderful to be here this morning. And what I thought I would do is just take you through an example of how one of our customers came to us to Lendology to make their home more energy efficient. And as I said at the beginning, Lendology is quite a unique lender in as much as we don't have any money of our own. We lend council funds to homeowners. So if you're lucky enough to live in one of those areas where the council has provided us with some funding, then happy days. So let's see what happened with our lady Sheila. We happen to run a mail-out campaign working alongside Exeter City Council with this particular client, and we surprisingly ran it with the annual council tax campaign. And really interestingly, she picked up the leaflet rather than putting it in the bin like so many of us do. And she says on our sort of, we've got a film of her saying it's one of the things she's very pleased she didn't put in the bin. Now, Sheila is a wonderful lady in that this is, I think, the second property she's retrofitted. So she moved to Devon from Surrey, and she felt that it's her job to stop using fossil fuels. So what she asked us to do was, as you've heard from our previous speakers, is she'd made all those decisions about what she wanted to do with her home and what her priorities were. And I think for Sheila, it was about that carbon reduction and about leaving the place a better place for her grandchildren, but also looking to be more comfortable in her older life. So she decided that she wanted to put in the heat pump, underfloor, PV, battery, and a heat recovery and ventilation system. And I mean, that's a big set of projects, but Sheila didn't hold back. So what our process is after inquiring whether or not it was eligible on the council loan scheme, what we did with Sheila is we asked her for some financial documents, and much like any lender, what we have access to is a thing called open banking, which gives us access to someone's bank account for the last 3 months. We look at all of her financial affordability. We're regulated by the FCA, the same as any other lender. So one of the key things is making sure it's affordable. So once the assessment had taken place with one of my case managers, we looked to find out the best option for Sheila to be able to make the loan repayments. And it fitted around her individual circumstances, taking into account everything else that she has to pay for and her other commitments. And we obviously made sure it was available through the council and helping them to sort of tackle the climate crisis. Now, the thing that we do at Lendology is we don't give the money up front at the start of the work. We can pay for some deposits at the beginning, but generally we make the loan repayment at the point where the works have been completed and the customer's happy. And those payments can either go to the customer if that's what they would like, or it can go direct to the contractor. And I think the thing for me and the thing for Sheila was that she's ended up with an incredibly warm, energy efficiency, low carbon home. She was incredibly happy with the customer contractors and the service that she sort of had. And she's been incredibly positive about the loan and how it operates. And she's an absolute endorsement to actually trying to make a minimum impact on the environment while still enjoying her life. But thanks for listening.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emma. It's really lovely to see a story that obviously really gives an overview of how people are really dedicated to making a difference. Moving on to Laura. So Laura's now going to talk to us from Retrofit West about the support and advice and assessments that are available.
Thanks, Pam. So as I said, I work for Retrofit West, and we're a community interest company, which means all of our profit goes back into helping the community that we serve. We're funded by the West of England Mayoral Combined Authority. So that means we're accessible to residents of Bristol, South Gloucestershire and Bath, but our website's full of retrofit stories and information for everyone to access. So we have a free advice service where we provide expert advice on retrofit measures over the phone and by email. We can also provide recommendations on retrofit professionals. We have a directory on its way, which will be on our website by the end of the month. And this will give you a list of installers and other retrofit professionals that you can choose for your project. We also have 2 paid services. So this is our design and installation quality assurance, where you can use these services if your architect or your installer is new to retrofit, or if you really want to make sure that your measures that you're installing deliver at what they should do and above. We also provide vouchers for assessments for up to £250 or 2/3 of the energy survey costs, whichever amount is lower, because we wanted to make assessments more affordable and start you on your retrofit journey, because everyone's house is different. The assessments allow you to pinpoint the specific areas in your home that need attention and will make the most difference to your needs. That way you can maximise the impact of any measures that you install. Our vouchers can be used on any one of our 12 service providers, which includes PropFlow. And we have a variety of assessments on offer, from heat loss surveys and air tightness tests to renewable energy assessments and full retrofit plans. If you're not sure what type of assessment you need, we can help. You just need to get in touch. Getting a voucher is really easy. You can apply via our website and just follow the short steps. If you scan the QR code on screen, you'll find all of our services that I've spoken about. And I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Laura. Again, just really good to hear all of the support that's available and obviously how people can access it. So thank you. So we're now going to actually look into the live Q&A and answer some of the questions. So if the panel can come back to us. I've got a great question. This has come from Harvey at the NSBRC. He's asking, we're big fans of Fabric First Principle. He says, my question is, what pressure can we put on the government of any colour to make electricity costs on a par for better than gas? As we know, this is a really big barrier for people embracing heat pumps in particular. So I'd like to open that out to the panel. Luke, looks like you'd like to take that one to start with.
That's an interesting one, because there's been a lot of talk about how we can make electricity cheaper. I would sort of try to. I want to sort of take a different approach. It's like, how can we make gas dearer? Because if you make electricity cheaper, it also affects the business case for solar panels and what you export to the grid. So I think that debate is an interesting one. But obviously there are some levies on electricity generation which could easily be removed, which would make electricity cheaper. And then obviously heat pumps, the business case for heat pumps cheaper as well. But the thing is, I want to get a heat pump for my property. Timing's not quite right at the moment because I need to do some stuff to my patio, so I don't want to have to move the heat pump. So I was just looking at some other things as well. So sort of like a thermal heat battery, for example, and sort of other electrical based sort of heating solutions. And actually, the heat pump does sort of come out top in the long run in terms of business case, even with sort of current electricity prices. So even if we do make electricity prices better, it will boost the business case for that. But I do think the business case is still there for heat pumps. I think there's other things such as disruption. That's what's preventing me at the moment from getting a heat pump. I think there's other things that we can address first potentially. And like I said, is there a way of addressing gas prices over electricity prices as well?
Brilliant,
Maybe
thanks.
A bit controversial.
Thanks, Luke. Emma or Lloyd, would you like to come in on that one in terms of your thoughts?
I think the fabric first measures are really important, and I think as a result of doing those measures, you actually reduced your energy consumption in the first place. So therefore, your energy bills, whilst the prices were a bit higher, you have to feel good about using less energy. And I tend to agree with Luke. I think until we put a premium on gas, no one's going to really dive into using everything electric. We need to start putting in disincentives for other measures in order to get people to realise that this is the right move.
Great, thank you.
Just to sort of build on that, sorry, but essentially, when we take into account how much we had to pay for increased energy bills when the Ukraine war started, essentially we weren't reflecting the true cost of gas or our energy security in gas at that point. So it's not about artificially increasing the cost of gas. It's reflecting the true cost of gas. I think that would be what my main point was there.
Great, thank you. On to the next question. We have a really good one. This question from one of the listeners, which is, do you make ground source heat pumps for multiple houses community? I think that's probably aimed at Lloyd. I don't know if there's any feedback on that from you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Pam. And thank you for the question. So at Glow Green, our renewable energy arm of the business is heavily focused at the moment on PV, solar and air to water heat pumps. There's lots of fantastic installers out there and lots of different schemes available for ground source heat pumps and also for communities. In terms of air to water heat pumps, as touched on earlier, I think we have a marathon ahead of us. This is a long-term journey we need to go on, decarbonising the UK property stock. And there's some great schemes out there at the moment in terms of the bus voucher for £7,500 for individual properties, which I think is great to get involved in.
Brilliant, thanks, Lloyd. Emma, is there any thoughts from you from that community piece or what you're seeing across the marketplace?
I think we're usually working with people who are dedicated to the cause and wanting to reduce their carbon emissions. And it's fantastic that organisations like Retrofit West are now here to provide that hand-holding support in order to help people. And it's, again, wonderful to hear Lloyd talking about the accreditations that people need to have, because I think we're professionalising the industry now, and it's becoming far more mainstream than it probably was even 2 years ago pre-pandemic. So I think it is about looking for the opportunities. We tend to work alongside some grant payments, and we'll do a top-up loan if people need them, or we'll cover the whole amount. So again, it's just about trying to work out what's best and working probably with someone like Retrofit West to understand what would suit your needs rather than the mass market, because as Laura said, there is no sort of mass market in retrofit.
Yeah, brilliant. Laura, would you like to come into that in terms of Retrofit West and that community piece?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of support out there for communities. We provide community grants as well. So if there is a group in a local area that has that more grassroots touch with the community, we do provide funding for that. But I think a lot of the funding and the communications is around people on lower incomes. So we really focus on that self-funded market who are sort of middle of the road. They haven't necessarily got lots of money in the bank. They can apply for a loan like through Lendology, for example, but they are not also eligible for a lot of the funding. So we've got pieces like on our website where you can find where there are funding options on that, but we can also talk you through how to do it in a practical way.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you. On to the next question. We have one from Rich which says, what do you think are the biggest challenges for people adopting a more energy efficient home? Is it finance, motivation, complexity to finding appropriate solutions? So he'd like to answer that one first.
I'll have a go. I think, yeah, they're all good points, and I think they're all barriers. I think the main one is, getting it as a priority on people's to-do list. Basically, we've got, we all lead busy lives. Some of these improvements are quite major bits of work, and I think it's about getting an increasing awareness of the wider benefits. There's so many people that I talk to saying, oh, well, I don't know if I get my money back within a certain time period. So how can you change it to the overall lifetime value of doing those works and the increase in property value, for example? What about the impact on your health and well-being? Like, as soon as people realize how much sort of it affects indoor air quality and how that affects your health, it starts to become, and like thermal comfort, for example, I think that's going to be increasing, as we get consistent heat waves every summer and really extremes of weather. I think that's going to play more into people's considerations. And timing. If you're about to remortgage, then that might be a good sensible time if you need finance, or if you've just bought a home, or if you're like Sheila, for example, if you're retired, you might want more consistent long-term price stability on your bills. So I think it's timing and like the wider benefits would be my awareness of wider benefits would be my sort of two sort of takeaways there.
I'd agree on that in terms of like awareness, and for me it is really a communication piece. Most people don't know what retrofit is. It's quite a jargon heavy sort of field. Even the term itself, it sort of turns people off. But I also think it's about disrupting that usual behavior pattern, because people go, my boiler's broken down, I'll get another boiler. I will speak to my friends about who's fitted their boiler, rather than thinking, okay, my boiler's broken down, what other approach can I take? What other options are there out there? So I think what we need to do is just communicate that message more and show, like Luke said, show people the benefits and the wider benefits, because it isn't always about payback period. It is very much about comfort and health, and also increasing your property value, like Luke showed in his presentation.
I agree. Sorry, Pam. I was just going to say, I wonder where this lifetime value piece has come from, because generally, before we talked about retrofit and before we talked about the climate, anyone who moved into a property would go, I'm going to put in a new kitchen, I'm going to spend 20 grand on the kitchen and it's going to look lovely. Nobody went, what's the lifetime value or the payback of my kitchen? How many meals do I have to cook before I get the value back? And I think we've got caught up in this narrative that is unhelpful. And as Luke and Laura have already said, it's about that living in a place that's comfortable to live in, whilst being able to reduce your emissions and reduce your bills. And we need to play that better. And I completely agree, Laura, about the word retrofit. We tend to call it sort of home energy loans, because actually retrofit is a complicated, nondescript word about something that's really personal about your home.
Yeah, it's a really good point, isn't it? It's like kind of people want to upgrade back to your kitchen, Emma. It's a really good example. And there's a fantastic question that leads on from that, which is from Keris, which says, how can we make decarbonisation, retrofit, less innovative and more mainstream? So on that piece, we've obviously touched on it a little bit, but it would be great to hear some more thoughts from you. Lloyd, is there anything from you, or what do you hear from your customers?
I think look, previous the greatest barriers out there, I believe, with heat pumps is the initial outlay, the cost. And with the new bus voucher at £7,500, it makes heat pumps so much more accessible. In some instances, you can actually take out a gas boiler and put a heat pump in for free if previous upgrades have been done in terms of radiators and pipework. And if they haven't, it's not a problem. It's actually easier than I think it's portrayed at the moment. There is a smaller outlay of about £3,000, but that's the typical cost of a gas boiler these days. So I think one of the biggest barriers with heat pumps was the initial outlay, but again, the support, the bus voucher is fantastic. And the same with solar panels. Talking here on behalf of Glow Green, we've got incredible finance options now where you have to put down, a very small deposit, in some instances, no deposits, depending on the packages. And sometimes the saving on the electricity can actually cover the full cost of the finance plus some additional savings. So, I think there's lots of good finance options and there's lots of good funding. And for those who are in fuel poverty and maybe on pensioners or people on benefits, there's also Eco4 funding, which again in some instances will allow people to have a fully funded heat pump and solar. And at Glow Green, that's something we're involved in too. So I think this is a marathon, not a sprint. We're at the early days, but it's all really exciting.
Brilliant, Lloyd. And I think, as you said, once people understand all of those opportunities in terms of the financing and the different products, and as we talked with Laura before about the community opportunities, that actually that's going to hopefully make it a more mainstream conversation. So I think that all of the panel have agreed that communication is a really key piece to obviously an engagement and shining a light on all the reasons why you'd want to do it as opposed to some of the negativities. We've unpicked some of those around naming. So does anybody want to add any other comments in terms of what they think are the potential barriers to taking this more mainstream?
Yeah, I suppose what I see is, solar panels at the moment feel like quite mainstream. I think over the last 4 years, there's been a 700% increase in solar panel installations. And as Lloyd said, 1.3 million. So even though that's still not, all of the UK housing stock, that's still pretty significant. And heat pumps, they have still increased. I think it's around 160% over the last 4 years. But I think they're, maybe like a decade behind where so about 10 years ago, solar panels, were maybe, felt like newish and innovative. And with government, like the feed-in tariff, it encouraged those early adopters, which then created the industry and then brought all the costs down, built out the supply network. And I think that's where we are with heat pumps. So I think it's the technology's there, the installers, the number of installers is starting to grow, and the skills, there's a lot of money going behind it, and obviously incentives. I think it's just going to have a few years to bed in and start to ramp up. And so when I got solar panels on my roof, suddenly a load of neighbours also got solar panels. And I think it is about having people that have had those installed and acting as champions. And, even if unwittingly, it's just like, I've just had a heat pump installed. This is how it works. And it just sort of lowers the unknowns to people. They've seen someone have it. They know how it works, and it just sort of lowers that fear of the unknown, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as we know, all of us within our work environments, that the more we can talk about it to neighbours and obviously to colleagues, the more we normalise it, don't we? And so people actually start to then to actually think of it as a viable option. So yeah, really good to hear that. We have another great question, which is, thanks for the great information so far. Nice to hear. Thank you, Nick. It says, I'm wondering if you can share some pros and cons of upgrading radiators versus switching to underfloor heating or other solutions you may suggest as part of a heat pump installation. I'll take this one to Lloyd first for obvious reasons, but yeah, please jump in, anyone else.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot. Yeah, really, really good question. It probably is the biggest barrier on converting from a gas boiler to a heat pump. I suppose the simplest way to summarise it is a heat pump will run at a lower temperature. So in order to get your property up to temperature, you do need to upgrade the radiators, because they're going to run at delivering heat to circa 50 degrees rather than 70, 80 degrees as a traditional gas boiler would. So a lot of the manufacturers have now developed radiators such as triple panelled radiators and convectors. So what this means is you don't have to have really ugly oversized radiators. They can actually just be a bit deeper to achieve the right heat loss for the property. Installing underfloor heating, if you've got the opportunity to do it, would highly recommend it. I have it in my house throughout the house, and it's absolutely fantastic. The downside to it is if you're currently living in the property, you do have to, remove all the carpet, all the skirting, and lay an overmat system. So I think with installing underfloor heating, if you're refurbing a property, is probably more suitable unless you're willing to do that kind of major work. But upgrading radiators now to much deeper radiators, as such as triple panels, actually is less effort than you think, which we believe makes heat pump installations really easy and possible to do now.
Brilliant. Does anyone else like to come in, Laura?
Yeah, I'd also like to say you don't necessarily have to upgrade your radiators either. The ones you have might actually be sufficient. I had an assessment recently to see if I was heat pump ready, and I think 9 out of my 10 radiators were good to go on that. So I would recommend getting an assessment, getting someone in to have a look, because it might be that you don't need that extra bit of work.
And this is where it comes in back onto the timing and trigger point. So one of a recent customer of ours, they bought a new property and they're just renovating the whole. So that they've got solar panels, they're getting underfloor heating, they're doing the whole shebang because it just needs that the whole property needs upgrading. Whereas if you're sort of not at that right time, there's no other sort of natural trigger points. It's maybe you're just sort of waiting until your boiler fails, and then that's when you said that might be a better time to do it. But yes, it's all about timing and making sure that it is an option on people's radar when it comes to those key time trigger points.
Thanks, Luke. Emma, would you like to add?
I think it is all about that what you're prepared to put up with. And as Luke said, I would be looking at maybe getting a retrofit assessment done right now, ready for when my boiler does go splat, or taking advantage of what Lloyd is saying on that £7,000 heat pump voucher at the moment that's available, and just looking at what the options are now and making that both personal decision around, can I cope with all of this at the moment, and can I financially deal with it, and making the right decision for you and your family right at this point. And I think this is the thing is we tend to talk about retrofit as being something that's all encompassing, but we can do it bit by bit. It doesn't have to be all done at once. So let's start with something that you can feel comfortable with, and it might be you start with your solar panels, or it might be you start with looking at the loft insulation and doing those energy efficiency measures first. But it is about doing it at the time and the scale that you want to do it, rather than feeling obligated to suddenly go the whole 9 yards and rip out all the flooring and all of that, because who wants to live through that? Not many of us, that's for sure.
Yeah. That leads nicely actually to another question from Steve. Says, any thoughts on more low-tech solutions? And I know we'll have lots of answers to this. Ground floor and internal wall insulation ? But yeah, if we're thinking about some of those small steps that you can make to obviously be able to support reduction of energy usage, who'd like to kick off on some of the things that we can do?
I've got quite a good example actually. My own property, I've got a new build, so it's actually fairly highly efficient. But I was noticing a few drafts. So I actually got a thermal energy efficient, thermal imaging assessment through Retrofit West, and it detected a few drafts in my property. And I actually had previously my own smart home detectors sensors in there as well, which were showing sort of medium level risks of drafts, and particularly in the downstairs loo. And I thought, why is that? And this thermal imaging heat loss survey picked up that the pipework hadn't been sealed, so it was just purely just exposed to the outside, and I hadn't picked that up. And there's a few things like the windows weren't quite adjusted, so it was letting in drafts. There's a few bits where there wasn't sealant. So I spent basically 30 quid on foam and sealant, and just, with this thermal survey, just sealed up those pieces that were identified. And because I was still within the 2 years of the new build, I got the builders round just to adjust the windows again. So And then because I had the smart home monitoring kit in there as well, all those ambers then went to green. So as a new build should be. So that was like a really good example of using both assessments, 2 assessments from Retrofit West. So the smart home kit to sort of have that ongoing monitoring, and then the thermal survey to actually pinpoint exactly where those leaks are coming from. So that yeah, like I said, cost me 30 quid on sealant and foam, and then the £100 was it on the, so I think the survey was 350 quid, and I got 250 quid off from Retrofit West. So altogether £130 of spend, and I've really massively increased the sort of comfort of my home.
Thanks, Luke. Laura, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I've done the exact same thing as Luke, really. We had a thermal imaging assessment to find these, and we had the same issue with the toilet. And just fill in those gaps of we had new windows put in, so there was some bits that we picked up on that, so we could get the window fitters back out to address those. But yeah, that is a really good example of the fact that you can use different assessments in combination. So with the voucher scheme that we have, you can have 2 vouchers per property,
which is brilliant, isn't it? And as we just were saying, I've likewise got a similar one around my letterbox, and also around just some holes that had been drilled for various bits of kind of cabling at various times over the house. So as you say, a lot of it I think is exploring where those drafts are. Moving on to the next question. So we have one which is, what is the typical minimum monthly bill for a home to consider a retrofit? And that's caveated as solar and heat pump. Some people think their bill is too small. Who'd like to respond to that one?
I suppose with solar, it's not just around your energy use. Obviously, if you get a increased self usage, that's great, and also change your behaviour. So you put the washing machine, you cook, over lunchtime, and then you sort of maybe reheat the microwave, for dinner, etc. So there's sort of like behaviour where you can increase your amount of usage of the solar for sure. But I wouldn't say we're massively, because I've got a new build, we're not massively, you've got huge energy bills in the first place, but we still got solar and a battery. And, we do get decent export as well. So Octopus is like 15p per kilowatt hour. And, it's more than paying for itself. And I would say, it's probably added a decent amount of value to my property as well. So, heating slightly different, but then again, there are what's the low hanging fruit? Loft insulation really effective and cost effective. Getting a thermal survey, and then sealing places which need sealing. Obviously, making sure that there's still enough ventilation so you don't get damp and mold. Obviously, so there's sort of like lower hanging fruit as well. In terms of heat pumps, again, potentially it could get it for free. In which case, is it really about the size of your energy bill? So. And at one point, I think Barclays was offering £2,000 off a heat pump if you had a mortgage with them, plus the £7,500 from the boiler upgrade scheme. I would say that's pretty much free, or very, very small costs. So, I think that would be my points there.
Anyone, Lloyd, Emma, would you like to come in on that one?
Yeah, just to add, I think Luke put it really well. I think. When we're talking to potential customers, I think the biggest thing is it's also protecting yourself from those rising energy costs. I think, like Luke touched on earlier, with the war in Ukraine, we've seen that energy crisis, and it was a massive surprise for all of us to then have to adapt to these new bills. Obviously, we hope these type of things don't happen in the world, but it just means by being a bit more self-sufficient and less dependent on the grid, and ultimately generating our own green electricity, we're in control of our future costs. And I think what's really important, it's not just what your bit where your bills are now, but actually what they look like in the future. And then also, like, how does the future look? They want to ban diesel and petrol car manufacturing, so everyone will move into an EV, and then there's more electricity consumption there. Then if you do have a heat pump, and that can then be fed from the solar panels. So. And I think also to add to that, we really all need to do our bit to bring down this the carbon emissions and to stop, to stop all the pollution that we're seeing and the effects of climate change at the moment with the extreme weathers we're having. So.
Brilliant.
Sorry, Pam. I was going to add. I think we've seen a significant increase as a consequence of the massive price increases, and people have decided they do want to be in control. And this is exactly where most of our loans have gone over the last 12 months, have been with solar and batteries. And it's about people taking that control over knowing what their bills are going to be like. And I think, as Lloyd said, with the boiler upgrade scheme, it's really going to help people now add that next level of into their property. And it is about you controlling some part of your life, which we all thought we had control over until probably the last 12 months. And they've suddenly gone 2 years ago, hang on a minute, I want to do my bit as well as pay less. So that's where we've seen a big increase.
But just to add to that as well, like, we all got support because of the increasing energy prices. Why should we all be getting government support? We should really be taking that into our own hands and being more resilient as a nation so that we can't be blackmailed by foreign countries as part of our energy security. And we all pay for those. Like, I was getting, money from the government off my energy bills as well. Why am I getting that? So it definitely should be much more. We should, not just individually, but as a nation, we should be taking, control of quite a strategic, security piece.
Absolutely, isn't it? And I think many people don't understand that correlation, do they? That actually investing in those renewables will provide them with that control, but not only on a household level, but then if we think about it from a community level as well, so that we can really step back from being totally reliant, as we know, on those more expensive, foreign supplies. Another question for the panel are electricity time of use tariffs, we can explain those for those that may not know, going to become more mainstream? So who'd like to take that one?
I can take that one because I've actually worked on quite large projects, innovation projects, over probably a decade ago now on time of use, demand side response. So essentially charging, let's say, your battery overnight so that it's really cheap. So when the wind's blowing, that energy needs to go somewhere. So, the price of energy comes down. But, particularly when people aren't necessarily using energy at peak time, I think it is going to be much, much more sort of mainstream. But particularly, I think, with heat. So I know we're talking a lot about heat pumps, but I'm quite interested in heat batteries and how you could potentially charge that heat battery overnight and charge your EV car, for example, overnight. Because I think our energy mix is massively changing. We've got a lot more wind, which blows even if there's no demand for it. And I think at some point you could even be probably paid to actually, charge your car, your battery, your heat battery for free, basically, or very low cost. So I do think that is, again, I think it's still quite early stage, but Octopus Energy, I've done a lot on this, and I keep getting reminders about energy saving sessions. I think it will be mainstream when it's just automatic, where you've got the battery, you've got all of these systems in your home, and you don't get reminders about energy saving sessions. It just happens. It charges when it needs to. It even puts out exports when there's high demand as well. So that's I think that it is coming for sure.
Brilliant. Anyone else like to respond to that question? No. That's great. We'll move on. We have got 10 more minutes. I'm keen to get through as many questions as we can. So next question is, do green improvements add value to your home? We've touched on this already and we've given some great examples, but I think it'd be really nice to kind of summarize some of those opportunities for our listeners.
Yeah, because I highlighted it in my presentation.
Yeah,
I do think it does add value to your home. And there's been so many reports. I mentioned the Royal Institute for Chartered Surveyors, RICS report, 15% on average. But there's been reports by Rightmove. There's so many, Lloyds Banking Group, and they all say there is a green premium, basically. So if you're more energy efficient, buyers will want to pay more for your property. I almost, like a really basic analogy, I see it as we know how much solar panels on average, for example, would generate over their lifetime. I see it as almost like someone's put some gold in your garden, and every year you just dig a bit of that gold up, and then there's a price for that gold. It's like, so that there's a set value there, whereas a lot of people have in their minds, oh, I'm getting money off my energy bills, which you are. You're just realizing that sort of potential value in a different way. So it might be that, let's say, for 25 years, you get 10 years living in your home, and you're realizing those savings off as energy bills. But then after 10 years, you sell your property. The remaining 15 years of value of those solar panels should be recognized on your property. And it might be that, of course, there's always conditions in the market, and are you desperate to sell? And so circumstances of the seller. But in a functioning market with a decent estate agent, and if you're not absolutely desperate if you know the value of your property and the works you've done to it, you should be able to get that back. And in sort of the worst case scenario, in a down market, it should help defend the value of your property as well. So you might not see a value increase, but actually for identical property, it's holding its value compared to that property. So I gave a real life example where the market is factoring in these improvements.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Luke.
I think it goes back to that piece, sorry, Pam, again, around people going, I'm not going to get the lifetime value out of this. I'm only going to be living here for 2 years. It's like, come on, you've invested in your property the same as you would with doing up the kitchen or the bathroom to make it saleable. So it's a really good mindset to get in your head around going, if I do this now, I can save myself money. Oh, and by the way, when I do look to sell, I'll get that money back because people will want that work that I've had done to my property, and they'd rather somebody else did it than they have to do it when they move in. So I think there's a real opportunity here to have a win-win, as Luke was saying, gold in the garden.
And I think it's a stronger business case than doing a new kitchen or a bathroom, because there's a set amount of savings that has been defined, whereas a new kitchen or a bathroom could be subjective to people's tastes, right? So I do think it is stronger, and so I think you're right, Emma. It's about getting away from this. It'll pay back within X number of years to here is a set value, and how you realise those benefits could be through energy savings, or it could be through property value increase.
One thing I will add as well is that one of the first step of retrofit that a lot of people ignore is repairs and maintenance. So you're actually improving the condition of your property as well. So if your house has got a better condition, it is worth more in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as you say, it's seeing the greening of our homes as you said, as that opportunity as opposed to a cost barrier. And I think, as we've all agreed on the panel today, that's about a mindset change, isn't it? Which is actually a behavioural piece. So the more we can talk about it, as we're doing today, the better. A few more questions before we depart. So we have got actually one for Emma, if you don't mind. Can I get finance with bad credit, is the question.
It's a good question, and many loan providers are not keen to lend to people on bad credit, and which is one of the reasons that Lendology was set up in the first instance, was to support those people with who were on limited fixed incomes, like pensioners, people on benefits, and people who are self-employed, who often find finance either unattainable or cost prohibitive. So I would say yes, you can, if you're lucky enough to be in one of the areas where we hold funds on behalf of the council, because that's exactly what we do look at. We don't look at sort of credit scores. We look at you as a human being. We look at you and your outgoings. We look at your income, and we take the whole of your home into consideration and make that judgment call. Yes, you can through a council-backed loan through Lendology. I would argue it might be slightly more challenging through a mainstream lender.
Okay, great. I get mindful of time, so if you don't mind, I'm just going to come to a few of you with very specific questions before we close. Lloyd, we've got one here. Are all homes suitable for heat pumps? Now, I know that could be quite a big answer, but yeah, if you could outline your thoughts, please.
Yeah, so I think to answer it in short, many homes can be suitable for heat pumps with the right work. Some homes will be, ready instantly, almost plug and play to remove a gas boil and put a heat pump in, where others may need to take recommendations of additional insulation work in order to achieve the heat loss. So I think the answer is the vast majority of properties can get there with the right effort and money spent.
Brilliant, thank you. And one for Laura. What assessments are best suited to summer and winter versus winter, and why? If you could give us any thoughts on that.
So most assessments are suited to all year round, but assessments such as thermal imaging and air tightness tests are best kept to the winter. Thermal imaging, you need a 20-degree difference between inside and outside to really get a clear picture, and you can't do air tightness tests in extreme weathers like high winds, and they also do need a temperature difference as well. So now when you're moving into summer, you should probably be looking at full retrofit plans, energy efficiency type plans, and then assessments on getting heat pumps and other renewables.
Brilliant, thanks, Laura. Actually, we've got another one that's come in, actually, Emma, following your response. So Steve has said, how does Lendology interest rates compare with a bank loan? So I wanted to put that one back to you.
Nice question. Thank you for that one. We are able to provide our loans at probably much lower than typical bank rates. Our loan rate starts at 4%. Majority of our schemes run at 4%, and we do have a couple that are now running at 5.5%. And the difference with us compared to traditional high street lenders is that everybody pays that set rate. So we don't just look at you and go, oh, because you're self-employed or because you're on benefits, we're going to charge you 25%. And for the really good credit people, we'll charge them 2%. Actually, everybody who gets one of our loans pays exactly the same rate of interest rate. So yeah, 4% is where we're at the moment in the Southwest.
And I think that's one of the best rates out there, because I speak to lots of mortgage lenders. There are some which are on like trials, so Nationwide has a 0%, but that's for the first 5,000 customers. And I don't know if that will be going into mainstream. So in terms of like mainstream funding that's out there at the moment, I think Lendology probably has the best rates, really. And you do cover quite a few areas, to be fair, Emma. You've got places in London, Cornwall just launched.
Absolutely, we do. And again, we're expanding across the UK. And again, this is where our council partners are looking to support homeowners to do the right thing. And they recognise the value of providing the loan scheme in order to help people and in order to actually make it more mainstream, to just get people doing more. And as Luke was saying, that you see solar panels on one roof, it suddenly cascades down the street. So that's why the councils are supporting us, and it's such a great scheme.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got a few more minutes. Actually, Luke, I'll just answer one that's, how will climate change affect our homes? Now, I know we've covered off some of these points, but I think it's quite a nice one given our topic for today to kind of end on that.
Yeah, and I mentioned in my presentation an obvious one around, we're going to have much hotter summers and colder winters, so extremes of temperature. I've just seen on the continent, like a couple of weeks ago, it was 29 degrees in some places, which is, I've got some friends over in Germany and Italy, and they're saying it's ridiculous. I think, if we saw the fires in roads, it's coming. Basically, this is going to be it's going to be standard every year. Fires, extreme heat waves, for sure. There are other things though. There is the drying out and sort of saturation of the ground. So it could actually affect subsidence, for example, flooding, flash flooding. So yeah, there's obviously sort of an individual point of view from like the comfort of your home, but actually, if we don't all take responsibility to help mitigate climate change, we could be facing other threats as well. Like subsidence issues for your properties, flash flooding. Yeah.
Does anybody else want to respond to that? No, that's brilliant. I'm mindful of time. As I've said, it's now coming up to 12:30. So I'd just like to say a massive thank you to all of our panelists and to our listeners, most importantly. I hope you've enjoyed the session today, and we look forward to seeing you again. The next PropFlow webinar is on the 26th of April, 11:30 till 12:30. Please do come along. It's going to be focusing on how you can make, again, same in terms of energy efficiency, with some great panelists to expand on today's discussion. Thank you, everyone.